The Roaring Twenties, a time of prohibition, partying, and extreme wealth. Prohibition, the 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The outlawing of alcoholic beverages left the country with a thirst for alcohol. Intelligent criminals at this time would find a way around this law and begin to illegally make their own alcohol and make a large profit. The smart gangsters who controlled the alcohol could potentially control the entire city. Cities like New York and Chicago will become the crime capitals of the country and become controlled by criminals rather than the law. One of which was Al Capone, a criminal mastermind, a gentleman, and a brutal killer. A man born in 1899, Brooklyn, New York City, raised by two Italian immigrants. There's a story about young Al Capone, a story about an old woman and a washboard. Young Al saw a group of boys steal an old woman's washboard. In response to this, Al would create his own gang of boys. Him and his boys went to go beat up the young thieves and return the washboard to the old woman. He enjoyed the way he was perceived as a hero, even through the violence. He would carry a similar theme with him throughout his adult years. An early relationship with another gangster, known as Johnny Torrio, would draw Capone into crime. Johnny Torrio was considered to be the biggest gangster in all of America, with a nickname, the Fox, for his cunning and finesse. Al Capone would view Torrio as a role model, someone to look up to and admire. Although Capone was born into an honest family, him and all his brothers would find their way into crime. When Johnny Torrio saw a new opportunity in Chicago, he moved from Brooklyn, New York to Chicago, and along with him went Al Capone. Together, Capone and Torrio would rule Chicago's organized crime scene. By the age of 20, Capone would have already found himself with a high position in the gang, being Torrio's second in command. Capone was very efficient with his work and would take out anybody who got in the way. Al Capone's killings had a signature style. They were deliberate, planned, and always had witnesses who suddenly had memory loss. Capone oftentimes would never personally do the killings, but send one of his men. This was so that he could maintain his reputation. Capone always wanted to be known first as a gentleman rather than a criminal. Capone had many nicknames, Big Al and Scarface, which he hated. Capone also had a strong sense and style and would gain a new nickname, Snorky, meaning sharp dresser. Capone would often be seen wearing green and yellow clothing. While ruling Chicago, Capone would try and keep his reputation as a generous man. He would oftentimes make generous donations to nearby businesses. This was so that he could keep his area under control and keep other surrounding gangs out of his area. In 1925, Johnny Torrio was shot several times. After his recovery, he gave Al Capone complete control. While Capone was in control, he would oftentimes offer his alcohol to bars, and if they were to refuse, he would blow up their bar. After destroying the bar, he would give a generous donation to help repair the bar and make sure that he would always have another customer. These bombings would result in the death of over 100 people in the 1920s. Under Capone's new leadership, there would be a massive increase in violence with a high spike in revenue. Now that Capone's actions have gone out of control and have taken countless lives, the police start to hunt him down. In 1931, Al Capone would get busted for tax evasion. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Capone showed signs of neurosyphilis early in his sentence and became increasingly debilitated before being released after almost 8 years of incarceration. On January 25, 1947, Capone died of cardiac arrest after suffering a stroke.